Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries from across the country. Joining me on this segment is David J. Sweeten Jr. He's the founder of Business Brokers of Texas. David, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
David, tell me a little bit about your work and specifically, who are the types of clients that you specialize in helping?
I've been doing this about 40 years. I help people that really want to change their life, buying or selling. And I spent the weekend in Austin working with a repair business. My typical business sale is something in the $1 million to $3 million range in value.
Terrific. So these folks that are selling, how informed are they when they reach out to you? Have they done this before, or is this the first time a lot of folks are going through the process of selling a business?
In most cases, it's the first time, and they're very uninformed, and it's a long process because you have to manage the seller's expectations as well as the buyer's.
Yeah, that's one of the inspirations for this series of interviews is I find that there's a lack of information out there and helping people really properly prepare their businesses. So that's what we like to cover. And you know, this whole series was inspired by the headlines of the Great Resignation and a lot of folks wanting to leave their corporate jobs and start their new chapters on their own. And buying an existing business is, of course, a really smart way to do that. How's that affected your market? Have you seen more buyers, and has that motivated sellers that have been on the fence?
Mark, the last 2 years have been unusually slow for me. I don't think people knew what to do. I sense now what's happening. I'm beginning to relist businesses for sale right now. But most people, they're absolutely clueless when it comes to what's the value of the business? How long does it take? What does it cost? Do I take all the money now? There's 1,000 questions.
Take us through a few of them. Give me the most important questions that they should be asking and give us your advice on those.
My first question I ask everyone is, when I sell it, what are you going to do tomorrow? Well, most people don't have a clue. So I say, you've got to have a plan for the rest of your life, because for the last 30 or 40 years, you've done something you felt was very, very important to you. So if all of a sudden you're not doing that anymore, you're going to be very bored. Mama's going to say, I took you for life, but not for lunch, things like that. So I want to be sure that the seller really, really is ready to sell.
Right on. And when somebody considers selling their business, how far ahead should they start planning, and what should they be doing in those planning periods?
In my opinion, you should start planning to sell it when you start it or when you buy the original business. Most people don't think like that, but you need to set your accounting system up, set your people. If you're going to have a company that has people in it, you've got to plan someday you're going to exit the business. So you start at the beginning.
One of the biggest questions I hear is about people, running their personal purchases through their businesses. Is that good or bad, and how does that affect the appearance of it when you go to sell it?
Lots of people do it. Lots of people do it for tax reasons. I'm a CPA. I've spent a lifetime doing tax returns as well. In the end, it's best if you have a business that is profitable and that you have a way to explain away any personal expenses that are non-recurring to the new buyer. And it's pretty easy to do. That's part of my process, is to come up with a list of things that won't go forward.
And it sounds like it almost might even be okay, because if it shows that your business is profitable and you have all these expenses coming out of it that aren't even part of the business, it shows the new buyer that won't be part of you can keep that
correct.
money.
I end up with what I call a seller's discretionary earnings number. And I start with a tax return, because everybody wants to look at a tax return. So from that taxable income or taxable loss even, I add back a few things such as non-recurring expenses, non-cash depreciation, interest expense because the new business may not have any interest, one owner's salary, and I get down to what I call discretionary earnings because most businesses are going to sell at a multiple of discretionary earnings, smaller businesses.
When you start to work with businesses, kind of give us an insight of maybe some big common mistakes people make when they prepare their business for sale. What are they doing wrong that you can kind of warn people about?
They haven't replaced themselves. They're too valuable to the business. They do not have an adequate backup person or people. They've listened to their plumber as to what the value of the business really is instead of really understanding how a buyer looks at a business. They're pretty clueless when it comes to what's the value of their business.
Speaking of that, of value of your business, what do you find, or do you have a set of rules or pillars that you look at maximizing the value of a business? I know that might be a major question, but if you can give us a 10,000-foot view.
Cash flow. People are buying cash flow. And so you need to have a solid business that shows growth. You would like to show growth even during the COVID years, or have an explanation of why. So someone's typically not going to buy a business just because it's got a bunch of trucks or a bunch of equipment. That comes with the value of what you're paying, is the operating assets. So you've got to have cash flow. That's the king.
Great insight. David, you've been doing this a long time. You've got a ton of knowledge and your CPA background. What inspired you to get into this field of being a business intermediary and helping others sell their businesses?
I've had a number of professional careers, including oil and gas exploration. I've worked in the food industry. I have a great interest in helping people change their lives in a positive way. And owning your own business is a dream for so many Americans. And I've owned my own, I still do. And so I just enjoy the accounting side of it, the business side of it, and the people side of it. It's a really good business. It's tough. It's maybe the toughest business that I've really dealt with.
Before I ask you my last question, is there anything I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share for anyone considering selling or buying a business today?
Two different questions. The buyer has to be sure that if he's married or has a significant other, that he has spoken at length with them as to where they're going to get the money to buy the business from or with. Most businesses, most people, their money is in their 401k, their SEP plan, and so they're going to have to take their personal assets. So you want to be sure that the buyers are on the same page. On the seller side, I think it's critical that they absolutely have gotten their life in such a shape that they understand what they're really trying to net on the transaction. I mean, do you need $1 million? Do you need 10 million? What do you think you really need? Not what you want, but what do you think you really need? Get your life in order, because a lot of people, if they've got everything paid for, they don't need near as much money as they might think they need. So you've got to be sure that what you want is not necessarily what a buyer will pay.
David, for folks listening right now who are considering selling their business, or somebody looking to buy a business and they'd like to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Well, we've got a website, business brokers. I mean, a company's called Business Brokers of Texas. And you can contact me at David at Brokers of Texas, DAVAD at brokersoftexas.com, or call me 210-697-8760.
This has been terrific. David, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
I appreciate it. I'll talk to anybody and help them at no fee. I'll charge only when I take on the job.
That was David J. Sweeten, Jr. He's the founder of Business Brokers of Texas. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.